On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, we go on a power trip and we hand out grades for the first quarter of the season to every player and the team as a whole. That next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks. We are giving out report cards today. Everyone got a passing grade, one player by not that much. I bet you could guess who. But before we get into that, I wanted to remind you that your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. That's right. We're introducing the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter, the one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Get writing from Alex and I, our team of national writers, and of course, Josh Lloyd giving you the latest in fantasy basketball. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. I also want to remind you that today's episode was brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we also want to remind you to subscribe if you're not already. Comment. You can just say go Knicks, or you can give us your own report cards. I'm curious where you guys disagree with us. So maybe in the comments go and either post a report card for everyone or just your favorite player. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's play-by-play broadcaster. I haven't done that in a while. Credentialed media member and Saturday host of the Locked On NBA podcast. He's Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website of the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media at thestrick.land. Throw them a follow. Be like Josh Hart, who gets a very good grade from us, Alex, but that is not where we start. We have to start with El Capitan, Jalen Brunson. An incredible season so far. What grade would you give him through 21 games?
Well, so Jalen Brunson so far averaging about 25 points per game, to be exact, 25.2, 7.7 assists per game, shooting 48.8% from the field on about 18 attempts per game to lead the team, which could be expected. Shooting 40.9% from three, so continuing his fantastic shooting of the last few seasons. From three throughout the course of this season so far on 6 attempts, which almost leads the team, actually is only lower than Mikal Bridges, which I guess we'll get to in a moment. And then is also shooting a robust 85% from the free throw line, but also averaging 7.7 assists. I think that's the big number so far this year. Gavin, for that reason and the growth that we're seeing from him recently in the passing department, I think I'm willing to just give him, I think just a straight up A. I think seeing a guy who already kind of had it all as far as a scoring package and being a top, player in this league and a top scorer on a team with something to play for, seeing him kind of dig into his bag and show us something new at this point in his career and become, like, in some games look like he's like Chris Paul out there, like an undersized point guard who can still get the ball wherever it is that he wants it to go and play a brilliant pick and roll, pick and pop game and all that good stuff, a drive and kick and whatever you want out of him. I just think he's done a really good job of adapting. I think early in the season, it seemed like he was maybe a little uncomfortable and kind of finding his way, but I'm willing to just kind of throw that out entirely because the stats now back it up. Like, he's still the player that we think he is. The scoring is down a little bit from last year, but I think that's good considering, the increased playmaking role that he's taking, where he tries first to get everybody else going. And then if the team needs him to, we've seen him just step up, like in second halves or whatever, still be the Jalen Brunson we know he can be, score like 20 points and, carry the team to a win. I think he's kind of just becoming the ideal player that you want right now. And there's not really anything, short of the defense, I guess, which he's never going to be like an elite defender. I think he's been doing a good job in just trying hard on defense, which is all you really need out of a guy who's going to give you that much offensive production. For that reason, I can't really find any fault with what he's done so far this year. And I think he's just had an A-level season to this point.
Yeah, I give him an A minus, which obviously is not a bad grade. And I want to clarify from the get go, because if people come on here and say why Deuce McBride get a better grade than Jalen Brunson because he's a better player, obviously these are relative to preseason expectations, just our general like talent level of these guys. If Deuce was doing what Jalen was doing right now, I'd give him like an A with like 10 pluses, and my head would probably explode, and I wouldn't be able to do this podcast anymore because that would be insane. But the reason I don't go high, first of all, let me say the positive first before I start critiquing someone I'm giving an A minus to. I'm with you. It is obviously a career best passing season. The thing that sticks out the most to me, and I've talked about this, I think, after the Hornets game, is just the evolution of his pick and roll craft. And part of it is like he just wasn't able to run as many like traditional pick and rolls in the past. Like it was mostly Julius kind of setting a screen and then like slowly like popping out to the perimeter. But like his ability to like freeze a drop defender and just throw like an extra hesitation dribble, and by his big, namely Karl-Anthony Towns, like an extra second to get all the way to the rim. How he's like dragging out double teams and like playing with pace in that sense, and like creating like easy opportunities for Josh Hart to go to the basket and Karl-Anthony Towns to go to the basket. And you see guys like Towns, like Deuce, like Josh Hart, especially having career efficiency seasons. That all goes back to Jalen Brunson, his gravity. He's facing defensive attention outside the second half of last year that he's basically never faced in his NBA career, and he continues to excel. He continues to be super efficient, 56% EFG. His the cleaning the glass version of that stat, which is PSA, points per shot attempt, 124.2. That is the second best of his career. His third season in Dallas in a much smaller role, he was slightly higher there. So he's been amazing this season. The only drawbacks I see are that like he hasn't had quite the relative efficiency jump that everyone else had, which I would expect him to, just because, as we noted preseason, like the offensive like ecosystem around him is just so much healthier than it's been in the past. And despite having a wide open paint, he's shooting slightly better at the rim, but that's kind of brought down by early season numbers. He's 64% at the rim, 60% the last two seasons, but early in his career, 72%, 68%. So hasn't rebounded quite to that. The like short mid-range shots that he's been such a killer on, 52% last year, this season down to 48%. Last season, 43% from long mid. That's actually up 48% from long mid this year. So he's been similar in terms of efficiency. He hasn't had that massive jump that you'd maybe expect. It could be offset by the fact that he's getting so much defensive attention. And I knock him a little bit just for some of the early season play. I think mostly to that Cavs game where switching defenses at times have just made him a little ISO happy, a little too shot happy. And I weight it towards like the recent play where he's been elite. And I think to your point, like just the timing of his scoring barrages and the fact that like he knows he doesn't need to get to 30 points and he embraces that. And instead he's like, second quarter, everyone else is shooting badly, I'm going to rip off 10 in a row. Like, I think that's the next step for him. So no complaints. He's been excellent. I think the final season grade is going to be higher. For now, I have an A minus for him. Mikal Bridges, I would expect both of us to be substantially lower than an A minus, despite a fantastic last two games. But where are you at on Mikal?
Yeah, I'm in a similar spot to where I know you're going to be on him as well. So Mikal so far leading the team in minutes at 37.9
Leading the
minutes per game.
NBA, I believe, in minutes right now.
Not surprising. I actually didn't check that ahead, but that sounds about right. 38 minutes a game is pretty high. 16.4 points, 3.7 boards, 3.2 assists, a steal and half a block so far this year. 47.2% from the field, but only 33.1% from three on a team leading 6.8 attempts per game. And if people are not familiar enough with it already, we talk about it almost every show. Just a crazy low number of free throws so far this year compared to his contemporaries in the starting lineup. So just to give you an example, I mean, of what everybody else has shot so far this year, Karl-Anthony Towns has attempted 110 free throws. Jalen Brunson has attempted 133. OG Anunoby has attempted 55. And Josh Hart has attempted 44. Mikal Bridges in 21 games so far has a grand total of 14 free throw attempts. That's just 0.7 per game. I think that is the biggest thing that has turned me off to his season so far and leads me to give him I'm going to just match, spoiler, I'm going to match you and say a C minus. I just think he could do a lot better. And I think he can still do a lot better even than what we've seen with the resurgent play the last couple of games. You know, I think that he's he's just a better player than what he's shown so far. And, we've seen everybody sort of have their growing pains settling in. I think we even saw Brunson have them, early in the season. To your point, he was kind of forcing things a little bit early, still trying to be the old him, and then realizing, oh, I don't have to be that guy anymore. And I think hopefully we're seeing Mikal kind of get his footing now too, and feel a little more comfortable with his teammates and with the overall team. But unfortunately, Brunson figured it out by like game 5, and Mikal's figuring it out like around like game 20, which kind of is he's trying to get his extra credit in, but he forgot to hand his homework in for a long time. So you can only grant so many passes. It's just like what my teachers used to tell me when I never did my homework. So I got to pass that along to him. I just think all in all, I think that he needs to do better. He is doing better. I think that he needs to not let one end of the ball affect the other so much. Like, I feel like if his offense has been down this year, then his defense has gotten way worse too. I think he's got to just get back to producing defense 100% of the time, and then let the offense come to him. It's clear that like between if he or OG are having a good game, that can be good enough for this team on the offensive end, but they can never afford for him to not be locked in on defense. I think that's going to be the biggest thing, but the offense seems to be coming around too. I do just wish that he would make a little more of an effort to get all the way to the hoop more often.
Yeah, I was just imagining the whole time you were talking Tom Thibodeau as a really grumpy substitute teacher. I think if we do live in a multiverse, there's a reality out there somewhere where he's doing that and just like scowling and like freaking out and having an aneurysm when kids don't do their homework, and then getting revenge in like the teacher student basketball game where he just sets bone crushing screens on like the students who were really lacking throughout the year. And maybe that's been Mikal Bridges so far. I don't know. But anyways, to your point, C- for Mikal so far. I wrote in my notes, it would have been a D if we did this 2 games ago. Like I almost went all the way up to like a C, or like I was thinking a C+ before. I was like, no. It's been like just too large of a sample size of bad games. But I am so encouraged by the last 2 games. And I do think he's starting to figure it out. And the fact that he's all the way up to 33% from 3 is a testament to that. But I think Ariel, when he was on the pod on Monday, summed it up really well, where there was just a distinct lack of aggressiveness on both ends. Does not want to get all the way to the rim, does not want to be touched. If he does get to the rim, was chucking the ball out to the perimeter. Concerns about his form and his shot aside, which again seemed to be coming around, like just doesn't want to be touched on offense. And defensively, like the same thing was there, where there was just this lethargy, like coming around screens, and you don't really see him getting low in his stance, which to me, like when I think of Mikal Bridges, the basketball player, I think of him like shooting threes, taking these long winding transition Euro steps that no one can stop because he is an alien just in terms of his length, and like getting low in his stance defensively and covering so much ground with his wingspan. And instead that's just sort of been lacking. Like he's kind of been upright. He's always chasing. He's always way behind. I think part of him looking a lot better these last couple of games is Karl-Anthony Towns being at the level and him having to do like a little less work fighting through screens and getting around screens and then being allowed to play in rotation. But the effort, the playmaking on defense has clearly taken a big step up. I don't think it's fair to go higher than a C- just because I would have described this as a disaster before the last 2 games. I'm optimistic it could be a B by midseason. Heck, it could be an A- by the end of the season. A lot of room to grow for Mikal. Next segment, the grades. We're going to call segment 2 honor roll. Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart. We are super high on them. We'll talk about it in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks.
But first, we got to let you know about our friends over at Chime. And we've all been there, spending more than we should during the holidays. It's so easy to get carried away. You just want to treat everybody in your life so good. Take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no monthly or maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Learn more at chime.com/MBA. And you can join millions of Chime members who are working on financial progress. Chime helps with fee-free overdraft up to $200. Your next deposit is applied to your balance. So get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. No monthly fees or maintenance fees, and over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. To date, Chime has spotted members over 32 billion with a B in transactions through SpotMe. Friends give friends a boost. Eligible members get complimentary boosts to temporarily increase a friend's spot me limit. And when you give a boost, they can boost you back to temporarily raise your limit. Now, that sounds like something with the holiday spirit right there. So, how it all works, you set up direct deposit in your Chime account. And after a qualifying direct deposit of $200 or more, Chime will notify you to enroll in Spot Me. With an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. And your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. Chime never charges overdraft fees for using Spot Me. So enjoy the holidays while keeping your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/MBA. That's chime.com/MBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Spot Me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in Spot Me and are subject to monthly limits. Fees apply on out-of-network ATMs and for OTC withdrawals. All right, Gavin, we're back in to keep talking through our grades here, and it's time for Karl-Anthony Towns and the new kid in school, new kid in class. Well, there's 2 new kids. First new kid not fitting in so great. At least not yet. He's starting to find his way. He started sitting at the table with them at lunch. He's socializing. Things are getting better, hopefully, which is weird because he had like 2 old friends from back in the day, and yet things just weren't working out. I don't know. Don't fully understand what's going on with Mikal.
They've been kind of clicky. They've been a little clicky so far.
A little clicky. But Karl-Anthony Towns came right in, sat at the lunch table, said, I'm gonna be one of the star students at this school. That's enough. School references. Anyway, he's had a great season. 25.1 points. He is at 52.8% from the field, a staggering 45.2% from 3 on 5.2 attempts per game. You almost wish you would take more of them because he just hits so many 3-pointers every game. 86.4% from the free throw line as well. 13.1 boards and 2.9 offensive rebounds per game, which is fantastic. 3.1 assists, averaging almost a block and a steal per game. And Gavin, something that's also pretty impressive to me, his rebounding percentages are cooking right now. 10.5 offensive rebound percentage and 34.2% defensive rebound percentage. Those are both, I mean, the 10.50 rebound is not quite like Mitchell Robinson levels of like super elite, but that is a really good number. And to my recollection, not having had it right in front of me a second ago, one of the better numbers of his career. I think he's really started to embrace what it is to be a Tibbs center and is having himself a heck of a year.
Yeah, he's been amazing. Wait, so sorry, I might have missed it. What was your grade for him?
Oh, I'm sorry, an A. Yeah, just give him an A.
Nice.
No caveat, no notes. Just give him an A. I totally forgot to give him a grade. I was
all right. Let me talk this through with you, and maybe I'll change. I had it as an A. I changed it to an A-, and I'm a little worried that I should be. Students hate when this happens, but I kind of think I should be grading on a curve just because this team has not faced a very tough defensive schedule. And then I look at games like last night against the Magic, and I'm like, all right, I mean, if they're doing that against the not really alleged, just statistically, the best defense in the Eastern Conference, like, is that even an important caveat? I think it's just that Dallas game is a little fresh in my mind. Even earlier in the year, that Cavs game is a little fresh in my mind, where we've seen this team can have their struggles against the elite units, particularly elite units that switch. And Karl-Anthony Towns is the ultimate litmus test of that, because I'd be hard pressed. Like if we're grading only on offense, like how could you not give him an A+? Like you read out the numbers, like 53-45, 86 splits, 60% EFG so far this year. Like he has just like been a monster pretty much everywhere other than at the rim, where he's been like, I'm going to check it right now. He's been, I think, relatively, he's shooting just 63% at the rim. 2 seasons ago, he was at 77%. So like, that's the one area where you could say he could be a little bit better, but the passing has just been insane. Like we saw like the should be assist of the year to Mikal Bridges before he blew that corner 3. I should have knocked him down a letter grade just for missing that shot. Like that was nuts. Like, and like the turnaround jumper when Mo Wagner was like, kind of like trying to bully him, like super saucy. I think A- because of the efficiency at the rim, because like there've just been some nights where you would love to just be able to throw him the ball and be like, go get a bucket. And then some of my frustrations about him not getting back on defense. But I think the effort has been there. the last couple of games. And I said it after the Hornets game. I said it after the Pelicans game. Like, he's starting to impact people at the rim a little bit more. Like, you see him making contact body to body. I think I just still have some of those games from earlier in the season in my head where he's on the ground and other teams are getting 5 and 4, or he's actually in the right position, but he's just making zero impact on the play. So I think I'm pretty content with my A-. But unless you have any final thoughts on him, what about OG Anunoby?
Yeah, I'll just say I think right now I'm the teacher that everyone goes to for the easy A, and you're the one that is tougher on kids but actually makes an impact on their lives for challenging them to do things at the moment. So
I
maybe I need to
appreciate it.
change my grading strategy a little bit. I think I'm just the home ec teacher or whatever right now that lets everybody cook weird crap all day. Anyway, OG Anunoby, I here comes another one. Here's another A from me. I don't know. I think he just continues to exceed expectations this year. So I give him an A as well. I'm giving out lots of A's for a team that some people, if you listen to our comment sections and whatever, don't think has lived up to expectations at all so far this year. But I think are really starting to find their stride. As they're definitely one of, if not the best offense in the NBA that's really finding their own. And I think they're starting to find their way on defense too, which should be a scary thought for the league. OG Anunoby is a big part of both those things. I mean, he's done everything you can want on defense. He's averaging 2.3 stops per game, which is the best mark on the team. He's averaging 17.4 points though, which, I mean, I know it's not completely crazy for, what he's done in his career. He's averaged close to that before, but 49% from the field, 38% from three on high volume. He's getting to the free throw line more than I thought he would. And he's got a bag now. Like, he's got an interior bag. I thought that the move that he put on Jonathan Isaac in the Magic game, not to use too much recency bias, with us talking about that game, but the move that he put on Jonathan Isaac really raised my eyebrows and it made me say, like, oh, OG Anunoby can do that, like, in the post, like, cool. I mean, that's awesome. Like, he sauced him up. He got the ball, kind of like backed him down a little bit and then just pivoted him to death, and then just took his 2 steps he was allowed and got under him and made a layup around one of the better defenders in the NBA just by using head fakes and ball fakes and some pivots. Like, it was pretty impressive to watch. So yeah, just the continued bag that he keeps showing on offense. Plus, I think the passing has gotten better too. Like, we haven't seen it as much lately, but hopefully we'll start seeing it more with both of them, finding their range from 3 again simultaneously. But the connection between him and Bridges, along the baseline, with them being set in the horn set, in the corners so often, and then, having the dribble drive penetration and then the kickouts to each other and the really good vision and timing. Both of them, I think, have done really well with that so far this year, but I think OG even more so. And it was even more surprising because I just didn't really think that he had that in him with the passing and the ball handling and all that. So he's kind of exceeded every expectation and definitely hasn't gotten complacent at all with that new contract. I think he's just aimed to just keep getting better and better and earn that deal and, keep earning it more, I guess. Maybe earn another one of those deals in like 4 or 5 years time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you said a lot of it. Maybe single biggest thing for me, he's played in every single game so far, which is just never a given. And I'm going to knock on my wooden desk right now. I hope everyone listening finding some wood, knocking on it. But he's been amazing, like pretty close to a no-brainer A. Obviously, like, small fall off from 3 where he was around, I think, 43% from 3 and now down to 38 just because he had that stretch of 16 misses in a row. But like, you can't question the shooting on the volume he's at. 2 stocks a game. The steal percentage certainly down a bit from last year, 2.1% last year, 1.6%. So you like to see the playmaking go up, but the defense has just been incredible. And maybe peaking of late, like absolutely shutting down Brandon Miller, like really bothering Franz Wagner, like when he was able to stick with him and like not get screened off him the other day. And like now that Tibbs, I think, because Mikal has struggled a little bit with some of those primetime wing matchups, is leaning a little bit more into giving them to OG Anunoby. Like, you're seeing him shine even more. What was it? 7 stocks against the Pelicans in just 31 minutes. Like, he's put together an all NBA defensive season and an offensive season that, again, like before that, like fall off, like might have been good enough on its own merits for him to make an all-star team or close to it. I can't quite go A+ because I think that would have taken like just a substantial jump in scoring. Like, if he was putting up the same efficiency and it was like 23, 24 points per game. But to your point, like doing everything you want, shooting the 3 ball well, just absolutely like torturing smaller players anytime they get a switch on him, just throwing a shoulder, throwing a spin move, putting them in the stanchion, dunking it, over and over again. I had the stat, like I'd have to double check if it's still true, but as of 2 weeks ago, like the only full-time wing in the top 20 in the NBA in dunks, and he was top 10. Like just a fantastic two-way season. When we come back, Josh Hart, the heart of this team, maybe the heart of these grades, maybe the highest one on the entire roster, Deuce McBride, campaign Jericho Sims, and we will finish. This could be a full episode in and of itself. Maybe if we need some filler later on in the year, we'll do this, but a full team grade. We'll get to that next here on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch, in the middle of the game, you check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. What I love to do, like mid-game, I've tended to look at my New York Giants, and sometimes when they're down by a lot, I'm like, all right, I think they could do a little mini comeback. More often than not, I'm looking and I'm saying this team is going to fall apart. They have no quarterback play. The defense that was playing so well earlier in the year has given up a little bit. I'm going to look at that line, and let's just say when they're playing the Cowboys, it's like minus 7.5 halfway through the third quarter. I'm like, that's not going to hold up. The Giants are about to fall apart. And I can, in the middle of the game, bet that line, and I might be right, and I might make some good money. But even if you're not so confident in your betting predictions, here's why you should get started anyways. Because you get $150 once again in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Such a small proposition to win so much. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Josh Hart time. Alex, I went your direction here. I'm just going to spoil this. I gave him an A, but I'll let you give the breakdown because I have a feeling you had a similar grade for him.
Yeah, I'm also going A for Josh Hart. Surprise, surprise. Mr. Homer colored glasses, Knicks colored glasses, whatever. 13.7 points, 8.6 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 1.4 steals for Josh Hart so far this year. Also nearly a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, which you absolutely love to see out of a guy who is not your point guard, but has been acting as sort of your secondary playmaker, dare I say, sort of in the Draymond Green mold in many ways on offense for the Knicks this year, although a very different defender in the way that he defends on the other end. But just the picture of efficiency as well, 59.3 field goal percentage so far this year, 37.7 from the 3-point line on about 3 attempts per game. So I mean, that great shooting from the playoffs last year is carrying over. 86.4% from the free throw line. But the biggest thing, second in the NBA at the rim behind Victor Wembanyama, which is nuts. I mean, he just continues to break stereotypes of what a 6'4" guy can do, or at least is the first guy to do it at this level since, I would say, Charles Barkley. I know that Charles Barkley was like, an MVP and everything else in a totally different stratosphere of overall player. But in general, like the things that Josh Hart is able to do as far as rebounding and finishing inside and just the overall strength that he displays just does not befit what you see. Like, it's just, he doesn't look like he should be able to hold guys down that much. He does not look like he should be able to get those rebounds, and yet he comes away with rebound after rebound. And lately, triple-double after triple-double as well. He just climbed to, I believe, tied for 3rd or 4th the other day for most triple-doubles in Knicks history. So he probably won't threaten Clyde with his like 30 or whatever it is, but he might find himself 2nd or 3rd all-time in triple-doubles for the Knicks by the time all's said and done for his career as well. I mean, he's just having a phenomenal year so far and being every bit for all the talk early, in the preseason and early part of the season of him kind of like finding his way again or whatever. He just needs to say that every single year, because then he goes on to have a career year. He's doing at this point everything that we saw in the playoffs last year, which made him completely indispensable and looking like one of the better value contracts in the NBA.
Yeah, he's shooting 72% inside the arc this year. And that is, for a guy who is not an all-star or an all-NBA player, that is a freakish stat. That is a freakish stat for an all-star. That is a number when you go back and look at, like, I don't know, Elgin Baylor in his career, and you were like, wait, he was shooting 72% inside the arc one season. I don't know if that's the right example, but my point is, like, it is an outlier. It is abnormal. And that is probably like his efficiency, 66% EFG, like that combined with the fact that he is shooting really well from three this year. Like that's kind of what gets me there. And the fact that, like, he is the Knicks' source of grit at this point, and that, at least outside of these last two games, is kind of my ongoing question about this group, like kind of ship of Theseus. I'm not sure, but that was the question I was asking before the season. Like, basically, how many parts of the ship can you replace before it's just a different ship? And I was wondering, in that long-winded way, if the Knicks could maintain their culture, if they can maintain just the notion that, like, this is a team you feel on a night-to-night basis that you simply do not want to play. And I think Josh Hart, even going back to last year, Isaiah Hartenstein is in the mix too, epitomizes that more than anyone else in the Knicks. And he has single-handedly kept that, where I think without Josh Hart, and if Josh Hart were to have an injury, like, I think the Knicks would lose that to some extent. So he's a cultural tone setter, and just having an elite basketball season so far this year. 1.5 steals too, on top of everything else. He's just been amazing. Deuce McBride, I gave an A- to 11 points, 3 rebounds, 2.5 assists. Biggest thing for me is that he, at least so far, is showing last season's 3-point shooting is not a fluke. 43% from distance, 59% EFG so far this year. And that's huge for a guy who his first 2 seasons in the NBA was 30% from three. He has become a flat out elite shooter, and it's off the catch. It's off the dribble. It doesn't really matter. It's going up. You think it's dropping in pretty much every single time. The only reason I didn't give him like an A or an A+ is because he hasn't totally made a leap yet, as like we talked so much about his handle coming into this season, and like it's clearly more functional and he's comfortable, but he's still not like an on the ball guy that's just going to consistently break you down and create shots for others. The defense has been really good. B-Ball Index put out a stat that he's like second in screen navigation in the NBA, which is obviously hyper elite. I think only behind Amen Thompson. So he's been about as much as you could hope for in terms of a 3-and-D guy for someone who's under 6'3", for someone who's only making $4 million a year. Maybe just not quite like a massive offensive jump in any single area that would be enough for like a huge leap of a grade. But what have you thought of his season so far?
Yeah, I'll also give him an A-. I mean, I pretty much agree with everything that you said there. I'll just add, similar to Mikal Bridges, although not as glaring because of what their overall roles are with the team. He's not exactly been getting to the free throw line a ton either. And I do wish, I mean, Deuce is actually like a surprisingly like springy player, a surprisingly strong player. Like, he's, for his size, like he used to be a football player, like, you know, and you can see that every time he kind of gets into a situation where he bumps bodies with someone, like he wins a lot of those scenarios. So I would love to see him aim to get inside more. But for what he is, I mean, even if all he does is just hit threes and play D and run the floor a bit, you know, off the bench, like he does that so well that it's hard to give him anything outside of the realm of an A, because he's doing that so well and showing that, like you said, the shooting is for real. He is, in my opinion, the one guy on the team that when he shoots a three, I'm most sure that it's going in. Like every single time that he shoots the ball, I'm like, that's cash. Like that's definitely going in as long as he's open and there's not any extenuating circumstances. And lately he's even been hitting some of the ones when he wasn't open, and, you know, getting fouled or whatever in the process too. So he's just been fantastic. Campaign is our next player here. I'm gonna go. I think A-. You know, I think that maybe a B+. I think for early in the season, you know, and maybe it's unfair, but you know, teachers aren't always fair with their grades. But that I would knock him for something early in the season that I didn't knock Brunson for. But like shot selection early this year was a little concerning with Payne. I think before he settled in, it seemed like every time he touched the ball, he was putting up a shot. I think that he's settled in a lot more now. He's averaging 8 points, 3 boards, 8 points, 3 assists, 2 boards, shooting 44% overall, 44% from three, 82% from the line. And it has a really good assist to turnover ratio, 5.7 to 1, as you noted in the notes here, which is third in the NBA right now. I think he's finding his way. And, I think this grade will probably go up to an A minus or an A. I guess also if we're doing this relative to expectations, we're talking about a guy who signed for the veterans minimum here, and who certainly, I mean, you and I were talking about early in the season, like this guy might lose the spot to Tyler Kolek like 15 games in. And that doesn't seem at all likely now. Like he is clearly a cut above right now, which makes sense. He's a 30-year-old NBA player and Tyler Kolek's a rookie. But I think campaign's been great. I really like the dynamic that he and Deuce are establishing, and maybe selling him short with like a B plus, A minus, somewhere around there, maybe like an 89.5. So he sneaks right in to an A minus there. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Cam so far?
Yeah, I gave him the first time I had a higher grade than you. I gave him an A minus. I think it would have been like a C minus the first 8 games. So maybe I'm to your point, I'm putting too much weight on the last 13, but I would give him a solid A for the last 13 games. Like anything I could plausibly imagine campaign doing well this year, he's done. Like 44% from three is ridiculous. I don't think he'll sustain that the whole season, but right now, like it weirdly, because early in the season, I thought every time he shot, it was not going in. He might be second for me behind Deuce in the like it goes up, you think it's going in rankings. Like it just looks good every single time. You mentioned the assist to turnover ratio. Like for someone who I think people would perceive, maybe just based on his energy, as like an erratic player, like he's been a caretaker of the basketball, like kind of similar to what Monty Morris has been doing for Phoenix and what Monty Morris did for years on the Denver Nuggets. Just rock solid, but also has those explosive elements. I think he's been locked in defensively, a lot of pokeaways, a lot of steals at key moments. He's hit big shots weirdly over the course of the year, developing a really nice chemistry with Deuce McBride since coming back. So I'm for someone who was like, I think it was nice of you to take the fall with me. I was the leader, I think, of the start Tyler Kolek. I'm done with campaign. That was stupid. Like he's been freaking incredible so far. Jericho Sims, I give a B plus 2. And that is pretty much just on, well, I should note the offensive rebounding has been really good, but mostly on the strength of him being literally the best rim protecting big in the NBA statistically so far this season, allowing just 37.5% at the rim. I say big because there are guards. I specifically Johnny Davis, our old buddy on the Wizards, who are slightly ahead of him on like a super small sample size, I assume. But he's been nails defensively. And given Cat's struggles there, he's the reason that the Knicks, and this was a stat I heard on the KFS pod that shocked me, are top 15 in the NBA in rim protection in terms of percentage at the rim. And that's not Cat, because Cat has been better, but is still like trending towards bad in that area. Sims has been so elite, playing like 13 minutes a game. He almost single-handedly drags the Knicks up. So that's most of my grade. He's also set like 4 or 5 just bone-crushing screens for Jalen Brunson that have gotten me fired up. So I've been a Jericho Sims fan. Also, much like campaign, against my expectations, because I was ready for Huck Porty time.
I'm gonna say relative to expectations, I would give Sims an A. If I'm being honest, like I thought that he was basically gonna be not on the team at a certain point. Like I don't know. I thought that his time was basically going to be up, and he's come in. He's really impressed me. I think that he's managed to finally harness his athleticism into skill. As far as protecting the rim and getting after rebounds and timing things better. I think that he's made huge leaps in that regard. I do think ultimately he's kind of just to this point been a placeholder for Precious Achiuwa and maybe eventually Mitchell Robinson as far as the roles that they'll hopefully occupy on this team, as far as being able to come in off the bench and provide some stoppage at the rim and potentially pair with Cat. We haven't seen Sims and Cat, and Tibbs sort of alluded to like, well, that's because we don't have any depth to really absorb that. I don't know if I totally buy that because it's not like Sims is playing a ton of minutes.
No,
so.
it's like Jericho's exhausted by his 12 minutes. You want him to go another shift? That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Mikal,
I guess
get back out there. It's only been 50 minutes.
Jumping that high, I don't know. Maybe it just takes a lot out of you, I guess. I don't know, but
he does hit
I
his
don't
head
really
on the
buy it.
rim like once a game. So maybe it's the concussion that like is stopping him from playing more.
Maybe. I don't know. But I don't know if I buy that whole theory, but I do think that Precious and Mitch eventually will get some chances to play with Cat. So I'm a little disappointed we haven't gotten to see that with Sims, just to at least get a little bit of an idea of what that sort of look could look like. But that's fine. It's not the end of the world. He's done really well with what he's been given so far. Gavin, we're running a little long, so maybe we save the full team grade for another episode. Or perhaps we just give a little teaser real quick on what or just a lightning round version. I feel like just based off the fact that we described every single player so far, people could probably get a pretty good idea of what our overall grades would be to this point. But do you want
Yeah.
to give your grade real quick?
Sure. I gave a B plus. Historically good offense. Crazy stat from Jared Dubin, the original Locked On Knicks host. So shout out to Locked On Knicks history for those of you who've been listening for a decade. He's a stat, or he just pulled a stat. I'm not sure if it's his offensive rating plus. That's basically offensive efficiency relative to the median in the league. So how much of an outlier are you? The Knicks, as of like a few days ago, and I would presume they've only moved up, third best offense in NBA history. So that is why they are a B plus. It has been like the offense has lived up to the hype pretty much in every facet so far. The defense has been bad, but there are underlying metrics that suggest like regression to the mean, should be decent. They've looked like a championship caliber team the last two games. They look like one against the Nuggets. They've looked much worse than that at different points. I think a B plus is a little bit of recency bias because before the last two games, it would have been a B minus or a C plus. They've just looked so good. I think things are trending up the right way. So I'm kind of high on this team, maybe higher than I should be, but I'm going B plus so far.
I'm gonna go A minus. I think that they've done a really good job of gelling together. I think the defense is coming along. And that was always going to be the part that was going to take the longest. But we watched the first few games on offense and we're like, oh geez, is this what it's going to be? A little too much your turn, my turn. And then they've gone on to, I mean, they tied the franchise record for assists in a game already this year. I mean, it's just that they're playing really beautiful offensive basketball. It's showing in, the offensive rating that they're putting up so far this year. Just the fact that they're dismantling now at times, pretty good defensive teams. I just think that, they're starting to find their way, and hopefully we'll see more statement wins against really good teams. But, you know, I was never worried about the fact that they started like roughly 500 through their first like 10 or so games. And I think we're now starting to see them round into form. And you're seeing like, okay, now that they're running up the wins a little bit. And I think that's going to continue. The schedule softens up pretty significantly through the start of the new year. If I'm not mistaken, like it's one of their better stretches that they'll have the whole season. I think that they're gonna continue getting better and better. And I think that eventually we might be talking about like an A or an A plus here once they integrate Precious and Mitch and get those extra looks. But for now, I think that an A minus is pretty good. I think they've done well to kind of keep the blinders on, keep the noise out, and just keep building and building and building. And that's kind of what Jalen says all the time. That's what Josh Hart says all the time. That's what every single person will say every time they get a mic put in front of them is like, we're just building, trying to get better every game. And I think that's really showing. And they're approaching this the right way. And hopefully, things continue to get better and better and better. And by the time we hit midseason, if we decide to do grades again, everybody's just straight A's across the board. Although if today's any indication, I'll probably just do that anyway. Anyway, thank you all for listening. And we'll talk to you soon and have more game recaps and, of course, NBA Cup play next week. So that ought to be fun. But until next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.